Hey guys, again, this is Jenny here, and I am an EP certification, and I am doing a 5-minute teaching on community. This is for the school director track. So why is community so important? It talks in the Bible, it says that it is not good for man to be alone, and that God puts the lonely in families. Family, whether it's your natural family or your spiritual family, it's so important. Family, it's covenant relationship. It's, coming into these relationships where you're saying, like, my heart is knit to yours. I am committed. And even though the going may get rough, I'm not out of here. Community, family, it can be difficult. When you're really close to people, often you will rub each other the wrong way. We all have our rough edges that need to get kind of sanded off of us, and so sometimes when we're living together, it's this refining process because, sometimes things get hard and things get revealed in us that we don't like, but it's like in the safety of family, in community, when we're committed and we're saying like, okay, we're not going to leave just because things are difficult, then we know that we're, in a place where we can work through our stuff. There's safety, there's love, and so just kind of evaluate like yourself, like, and what is your community? Do you have a real community outside of EP? Are you connected to a local church? Like, consider your church history. Like, how many churches have you attended? And what I often find curious when I meet people is, and I hear about their church history, it's like, well, why? I've transitioned. Like, I have transitioned to 3 different churches in the last, I don't know, 12, 15 years. But it's like, what is the reason for moving on, and why? Is it because, you never want to move on out of, a church because you're offended, because when we do, when we find ourselves in that place where like, oh, someone stepped on our toes, we need to look at the opportunity for growth and to come up higher and to see what needs, having that teachable heart and see what needs to be refined in ourselves, so that we can grow, that we can develop. There have been in the past season so many Lone Ranger prophets where, it was, often the prophet had this orphan or rejection kind of complex. They felt like they were all on their own and it was about them and their ministry and their name, and they didn't really have a strong, solid base around them. But that's not the best way. There's other prophets in the Bible. We look at like Samuel, like Elisha, and they were actually there were companies of prophets, schools of prophets. So they had positioned themselves in community. They were raising up people, bringing in spiritual sons and daughters who they were committed to, they were doing life with. We need to be in relationship because we all have blind spots. And so often people who lack that community and that connection, it really shows that there are either some character issues or a lack of teachability in certain areas where they're not being willing to, stick it out and deal with the stuff that comes to the surface. But when you stick it out, when you say, I'm not going to go anywhere, even though this is uncomfortable, there is a blessing that comes from staying in family, staying in connection, because when you're in community and people get to know you, it's like you have their back, they have, your back, and there's this protection that comes with it. Prophets, to be in any fivefold office position, if you look at Ephesians 4, it talks about the offices, the purpose is for the equipping of the saints. And so that shows that we have to be in community. You can't call yourself a fivefold minister if you're not in some capacity equipping people, if there's not sons and daughters coming up behind you. But for you to be able to step into your place as a spiritual mom, a spiritual dad, you have to have been willing to learn first how to be a son or a daughter, to be in the hard places of relationship, to connect, to love on people, to be loved, to be refined, to be corrected, because we get corrected, fathers out of love, they correct us. It's all part of the process. So, ask yourself some of these questions, like, are you able to make friends easily, or do you only have 1 or 2 friends? Maybe you grew up with them. Do you have people outside of your family that you're close to, that you're in connection with, that know your heart? Or do you, have trouble keeping a friendship for more than a couple months? Do you, disconnect from them when the going gets hard and pull away and isolate? Do you have a sense of community in your geographical area, whether, that's a local church, or a broader church? I drive an hour and a half on Sundays to get to the church that God has called me to. There are, just because I know it's family, and there's safety in that, for me to grow in my office and grow in authority. Like I know that I need that family, and so we all need to be part of a local assembling of believers, whether it's a church or a home church or a group, but just to have that family, and as we're ascending, if we're really in this process of ascending the mountain of destiny, we're going to find that as we go to different plateaus, different levels, there's going to be, it's kind of like, in some ways, a revolving doors of relationship, because at different levels we have different connections that meet different needs. And so if we are going higher and we are ascending, naturally not everyone is going to come up with us. And so, we need to be in that place of flexibility where we can move with it. We can, say goodbye to relationships. We can always be inviting in new relationships, but always be in that place of community, of spiritual family, of connection. We're all called to be ministers of reconciliation. And really what that means is we bring in these orphan sons and daughters, and we restore them to the heart of the Father. We reconcile them to God. And so it's like, if we are going to fulfill this call of being ministers of reconciliation, we have to understand family, and we have to understand the Father and how he loves us, so that we can bring in these orphans and make them spiritual children. Yeah, anyway, that's my talk on community. Thanks for listening. Little over 5 minutes.